All right, all right. It's getting to be that time. Thanks everyone for signing on who's here so far. I'm just gonna kill a little more time here and play my theme song. Here we go. Don't stop, they keep going. You can lose your life, but it gon' keep going. Why not risk life when it's gon' keep going? Yeah. When you got somebody else was born, but at least we got the sense. Welcome everybody. It's almost go time. Yeah. The words of the great contemporary poet, Jeffrey, Young Thug. All right, all right. Welcome, everybody. We are coming to you live from the heart of Asia, Akadem Gorodok, Cellframe Central, and it is exciting times, everyone. And you know what? This week, I'm not even mad, you know? I'm thankful. That's the word of the day today. I am thankful, and I'm going to start out the show with some shout outs. And of course, we're going to get into some Cellframe talk and then get to some bigger issues going out there. All right, all right. So we're coming to you live from the heart of Asia. Welcome everyone who's having a good evening out there and out here in China and Bangkok and Kazakhstan and everywhere else. You know, good day to everyone in Europe and good morning to people out there in the Americas. Hope you enjoy your Friday. Hope it's productive and casual and great. All right, so what am I thankful for? You know, we got to shout out all the big things. Thankful for the Bitcoin algorithm. You know, if it wasn't for that little white paper by Satoshi Nakamoto, whoever they are, you know, none of us would be here in this amazing crypto space that we have today. Thankful for the Ethereum developers, Vitalik, creating a programmable smart contract internet, a whole operating system based on the blockchain. Thankful to Cellframe, the developers, the founders, the people that brought them up, the people that helped them along the way. You know what? I'm even thankful for, you know, the SEC and the Fed and anti-Bitcoiners like Peter Schiff. You know, it's the dialectic. We're going to get back into that later. Everyone's part of the ecosystem. I'm thankful, first and foremost, today for our community. Cellframe has an amazing community. You know, I've dabbled in a couple other startups in my day and was super impressed by the way that the Cellframe community is so active, so passionate, so engaged on many different levels. You know, whether you're one of the guys that's holding it down in the main chat and letting people know about everything that's going on. You know, we've got people who don't know as much about the development end, and we've got folks in the chat who let them know what's going on in the GitLab updates and everything. Anyone who's followed that, obviously these days, it's a lot of updates as we build up to the Mainnet. Exciting times. You know, the other thing that's so awesome about being in crypto and working with a community like Cellframe, it's so international. You know, it's funny, you know, being in the West or, you know, in America or whether the UK, you tend to, it's hard to really grasp the scope of the globe and the people in it. But the minute you dip into, you know, a community like Cellframe, you've got people coming from all over the world who share, you know, you immediately see that people around the world are the same. They have the same ambitions. They have the same desires, the same loves, the same readiness to get out there and get something done. So it's been awesome. Just want you know, last time I was on here, we had a man from Iran. You know, it's a amazing culture, Iran. You know, it's been demonized in America for political reasons for a long time, but you know, Persian culture is so powerful in the history of this world. You know, it was basically the heart of civilization for hundreds, if not 1,000 years. The heartland of the mountainous heartland of Iran and the Mesopotamia, which was part of the heartland of the Iranian Persian empires of old. These are places with incredibly rich culture and that influenced much of the world. You know, the Sarmatian Iranic peoples used to be spread all around Eurasia. You know, the Scythians were an Iranic speaking people. The current inhabitants of Turkic speaking inhabitants of countries like Uzbekistan and are extremely influenced by Persian culture. So it's amazing to get in touch with people, real people from those countries, and see that, you know, we all have something in common. Had a great interview with some Tamil community. I believe they were, you know, Tamil is a language of southern India, if you don't know, and Sri Lanka. It's one of the old literary languages of India from back thousands of years ago. You know, 300 BC, you've got already have Tamil literature. And if if you're just living in, working in the West, you might not ever encounter a person from Sri Lanka. But I was lucky enough to speak to those people just from being in crypto. So super thankful for that. Also super thankful for the people who are getting getting in touch with me on the internet for some of the posts from Cellframe Social recently. Special shout out to a fella named, I think it's a guy, Onosai Leota from YouTube. Had a great line. He says, "I know this project will be the new standard for crypto." And I think that's exactly right, man. I mean, the kind of features and the kind of advantages that Cellframe is going to deliver over the first two generations of blockchain and even other third generation blockchains that are out there. I think indeed that a few years down the line we'll be seeing Cellframe as the new standard in crypto. Oh yeah, also shout out to my guy Diablov, who recently tweeted about the incoming mainnet and said that the masterpiece is incoming. Yeah, so this is a guy who's been with us for a long time, extremely active in the community. I'm sure some of you know him from our chats and from Twitter. So here we are in Siberia, and people all over the world are collaborating to build this incoming masterpiece of blockchain technology. And indeed, I think it is going to be a new standard. You know, like I said, the speed that gets delivered in the Cellframe blockchain, the security that's on an order higher than most out there, because it includes obviously quantum security, quantum proof signatures, as well as other security features. You know, we got the ecology side of things, the fact that it can run on very lightweight equipment, adaptability. So these are all things we can get into today. Just our Cellframe talk. And so after community, my next shout out today is for the designer. I personally love the way that our apps look. I think that's really important. Everyone's talking about crypto adoption. How do we take that to the next level? How do we take that to the mass adoption level? And to me, design is a big part of that. Getting a little birdies telling me that my mic is not doing so well. There we go. Going to crank it a little bit. Yeah, so shout out to our designers. If anyone's opened up our apps, the dashboard, we released Wallet app, which is currently on desktop, but is really aimed at the mobile platforms. These are all beautiful things. Our site, our Man, I think Twitter is compressing my audio. Like I said, VPN is bringing you my voice today. I've tested it. The thing is super fast, even out here in Russia, where a lot of major VPN companies are having issues right now. VPN is doing great. You know, all the audio issues that we're feeling right now, I'm going to blame it on Twitter. Anyway, back to the designers. So yeah, I think that the design is a really key part of this mass adoption thing. Shout out to Mira, co-founder of Cellframe. Got a great eye for design. Our design team is amazing. The apps are looking great. The website's looking great. I've been looking at a bunch of different kind of third-generation blockchains in the past couple of weeks, and I really think that our design is off the hook, and some of them are lagging behind. Okay, don't want to diss on anyone, but that is part of how mass adoption happens. The smartphone was actually invented before the iPhone came out, but freaking Steve Jobs just realized that you had to make it super sexy. I think there's a famous anecdote about Steve Jobs that the most important class he ever took at Reed College was the class on typography and typefaces. The little details. What does the typeface say to you? What is the typeface that we need for mass adoption? So shout out big time to our designers at Cellframe. Just as a little aside, I can give you guys a little sneak peek. Cellframe is indeed going to get into the hardware business. I can't say anything for sure 100%. This is not an official announcement, but we've heard the calls from the community. We presented our node running on a Raspberry Pi at a conference last year, and a lot of people were really into it. They were like, how can I get a node like that? Well, you may be in luck. All right. Going to deal with this mic issue later. Just going to roll with it for now. All right, and finally, the biggest shout out, of course, is to the Cellframe engineers who have been working their butts off over the past couple of weeks to get this release candidate of the Cellframe mainnet going. And we just announced today that it is in the beta testing phase. So we've got our closed beta testing group. It's a group drawn from our community. For now, there aren't any more open slots in it. We're going to make sure that we can handle everything that's happening in that group. Make sure we can take everyone by the hand and lead them through all the processes of setting up a node and testing it. But the Cellframe mainnet release candidate is in the beta testing phase. We've got our community working on it. I'm in that group on Telegram, the beta testing group. It's active. People are running it successfully. The Cellframe mainnet release candidate has gone through our QA team already. So it's, that's the step that it took, the internal testing step that was required for us to get it to into the public beta. So it's gone through our QA team. I saw those guys working in the office. They've been killing bugs for a couple of weeks now, and right now we're opening it up. And soon we're gonna be ready to open it up to a broader number of testers. So if you're out there, get your hardware ready. It is already kind of a proof of stake situation for you to test. So you do need to have the right amount of either Kel or Cell tokens in order to start the beta testing for the release candidate. So the process is that you got to have those tokens in your Backbone wallet. Send that wallet address out to our beta testing administrators, and then they'll give you the test tokens for the test net. So they got the test nets of Raiden for Cellframe and Riemann for KelVPN, and those testnets are active right now with beta testers. And then as soon as all that beta testing process is done, that's when the mainnet release will happen. That's when we will run that software on the backbone network, the actual Cellframe mainnet. All right, so this is shout out to our engineers and a little bit of updates on what's going on with the Cellframe mainnet release. And if you're not in the beta testing group, but you haven't downloaded either Cellframe Wallet or Cellframe Dashboard, and you haven't done any staking or anything like that, go ahead and check those out. They're beautiful and they're working good on the test nets. All right, so I'm ready to take, if anyone wants to jump in here and talk, I'm ready to talk with you guys. If anyone just wants to say hi, tell me where you're coming from. Maybe you can tell me what got you into Cellframe. You can just chat a little bit. If you want to ask questions or make a point of any kind, this is Cellframe After Dark, so basically a little chill zone for us. A little opportunity for me to talk if you all don't want to, but hey, jump on in. I'll be here every week, so please get comfortable. One thing that I put up in my tweet announcement for this session is that we're going to talk about dog food. And shout out to CZ, Binance, my homie, everyone's favorite, our hero out there in the blockchain space. Built an amazing company in Binance. The BNB network is a network that we work with. We've got tokens on the BSC Binance Smart Chain. And he's obviously got an amazing centralized product, which is now running into some difficulty with those good old American regulators. So that's a fun dance that we can talk about moving forward. But yeah, he had this funny phrase that I actually, even before he tweeted about it, I read his statement where he was responding to kind of the litigation, sort of the accusations tossed at Binance by American regulators, and he mentioned that they eat their own dog food, and I didn't know what that meant. I was like, dang, that's an interesting phrase. I wonder if that's something from what world is that from? But yeah, he actually put out another post. Shout out to Rex NK, Binance feed writer, who's been talking about Cellframe. He brought this to my attention on the Twitter feed. So if you guys missed it, eating your dog food is actually a term that's from the 1990s in the American, I guess, yeah, like basically from the Silicon Valley scene. And it means that as a company, you actually use your own tools. And I think that's one thing that Cellframe is really good at. Some of you may know about Cellframe's, the blockchain that we have and the public-facing stuff, but the Cellframe SDK, the Cellframe Software Development Kit, is actually sort of like the pride and joy of the company, because it's actually been, it's being used by development teams, and it's offered also, as a to the public, but it's also offered as on a kind of a white label basis to different businesses who maybe want to build a corporate blockchain or something like that, some kind of B2B use case. So Cellframe SDK is what we use, all the time. And so one of Cellframe's strengths is that we've built our code base entirely from scratch. As I mentioned before, some exploits against blockchains have happened because people are just using third-party software, and there's an exploit there that they never really checked. And the fact of us writing in C code, this is kind of like a discipline thing. It not only makes you makes it possible to do all kinds of awesome things with the speed and interacting directly with the machine, but it also kind of disciplines you. Obviously, I've heard our our developers complain about it sometimes because writing in C makes it harder. There isn't a lot of these automated things where it's like automated garbage collection and stuff like that. You kind of have to make sure that every possible avenue is accounted for. But it also creates a kind of more an attitude towards your code base that's more detail oriented, and that's going to help us in the future. So yeah, so like Cellframe SDK is the basis on which like the KelVPN service, shout out KelVPN, coming to you live right now through KelVPN. That's so recently we had an upgrade on the Cellframe SDK, which allowed us to improve the quality of. So we had an upgrade to the SDK, which helped us improve the quality of the VPN service. So here at Cellframe, we're all about eating our own dog food. We've got the best dog food, and that's what we work with. Another interesting fact about Cellframe SDK is that it's being run on an international project creating a fusion reactor. All right, so Dmitry is actually part-time employee of internationally well-known Institute of Nuclear Physics in the Russian Academy of Sciences in Siberia. And this institute is working with international projects, the ITER reactor project, working for an amazing, obviously, thing that we all want, which is clean fusion energy. I think if that happens, a lot of our energy troubles will evaporate, because obviously clean fusion, fusion runs on just a very small amount of fuel from basic elements, and could create huge amounts of energy. And so that elements of the Cellframe SDK is used on the sensors in these experimental reactors. I think one of the types of machines they've got is called a synchrotron. I'm not entirely sure. I'm going to learn more about that. We're planning to do a piece, some video content from that institute, and Dmitry is going to tell us about his work there. So amazing stuff happening with Cellframe SDK. All right, once again, invite anyone who's on here to join in and join me in a discussion. All right, so that's eating our own dog food. And, I also just want to give a brief update on the quantum apocalypse. I think that, like I said, my news feed is getting jammed with new articles about quantum computing advances. I'd say that there's like about 3 categories of news that are coming out. One of them would be just, hey, this IBM computer has now got this many qubits, and it's working at this level. You see those pictures of those amazing IBM computers that look super futuristic, but also a little bit steampunk with all the wires that are there. Then there's stuff about new materials that can be used to enhance quantum computing. And then there's stuff about, like, I saw an article today from Yale Daily News, of all places, a college newspaper, but it's reporting on a team at Yale University that has created a new system for increasing the lifetime of a qubit. So this is like a kind of these quantum states that are achieved that can be used in computing. They're a bit ephemeral, and they've devised a way to actually more than double the lifetime that a qubit will exist. And so that obviously, 2.3x what was possible before. So that's already a huge, obviously, to get to a point where quantum computers are able to hack and do all those exploits that we think that they will, it's going to take a long time. But in a single team, has now more than doubled the proven capacity of a single qubit. And actually, part of what allowed them to do that was machine learning. So now we've got AI getting in on the game of building quantum computers. Obviously, sounds a little scary when you put it that way. You've got, Elon Musk is out there on Twitter talking about how the dangers of AI, and I'm personally not like too worried about like a sentient being emerging out of AI and killing every human or whatever. But smart people out there are worried about it, so whatever. But machine learning is a part of it, a part of what we're going to be dealing with as far as security goes in the future. So if we talk about the topic of self-frame security, obviously we're integrating all these quantum proof algorithms that are out there. Obviously they haven't been tested by any real quantum computers, but the math is pretty solid. Like, this many qubits will crack this sort of encryption, and then when you get up there, you really need these very long, kind of elaborate hashes that aren't going to be able to be cracked by the quantum computers. And machine learning. We had a great question from one of our community members on an AMA with Dmitry, who asked, "Will AI be a similar threat to quantum computers?" And he's agreed that yes, quite potentially that will happen. I think in AI, even without quantum, I think it might be possible that some classical cryptographies can be cracked with the help of AI. So I think that, even in a non-quantum space, I think Cellframe's ability to integrate these new encryption methods, these new post-quantum signatures, I think that will be good. Going back to the idea of Cellframe being the new standard for blockchain, and part of that is the security and our ability to integrate them, and also to be agile and change, right? So that's one of the kind of drawbacks of the first couple generations of the blockchain. We've got sort of limitations on upgrades to the algorithm. We've got the hard fork issue. Vitalik out there in his hard fork t-shirt, and Ethereum has shown some ability to be agile, but the way that Cellframe is designed, it can integrate whatever the latest security encryption algorithms available. It can be agile in that way. We have this system of decrees, which can essentially do forkless upgrades for the system. And at the moment, Cellframe is just on the verge of launching its mainnet. It's a bit centralized at this point, but our goal is to very quickly move to a DAO structure where the community will be able to vote, and those kinds of upgrades will be easy to do if the need arises and when the need arises. All right, so that's the security end, and I'm going to speak to the idea of speed. This is a little bit, goes off into a couple different directions. So like I mentioned already, the fact that we have a blockchain that's designed for incredible speed and is written in that C code that can interact with the machine directly. So the first element of that is ecology, using the least amount of possible energy running on a small device, maybe running on older devices that are lying around. We've got that proof of concept where we can totally run a Cellframe node on just a Raspberry Pi. Cellframe services will probably require more hardware, but then again, that hardware isn't lacking. Actually, a lot of it is standing idle. We've got the whole issue of Ethereum miners who had all these Ethereum-centric ASICs built, all these video cards going into that market. And those video cards can be used for Cellframe services. So providing, say, a Kel VPN service. And also, we've got a couple of things on the agenda coming up that will really be able to take advantage of computing power and create that fog computing, which we talk so much about, a kind of distributed cloud that runs on individual computers that are just hooked up to the internet and to the blockchain network. One of those is video streaming. Um, some have said that it's impossible to do kind of a Zoom competitor like on blockchain, or in a distributed peer-to-peer way. You know, torrent works because you're grabbing a bunch of files from like a static. You're grabbing a bunch of chunks of files from a static file that's on a bunch of different computers, and it's a little bit easier. Something like live video streaming is a bit more, much more of a challenge than something like torrent. But the way the speed of the Cellframe blockchain is going to allow that. So we're going to have a peer-to-peer video streaming competitor in the pipeline. And then the newest thing that Dmitry has announced is a project to build an AI training system, plus it's going to be coupled with the ability to run that actual AI, right? So one thing that we really need to be addressing right now is the incredible increase in computing power required with ChatGPT AI situation that's happening. So we've got suddenly so many people not only trying to train their own machine learning, natural language processing algorithms, they also need to run them. It all takes a huge amount of computing power, right? So this is where the fog can step in. And a decentralized blockchain network that is going to train and run an AI algorithm, not only is that going to be, it can be more powerful, the actual network effects that can happen when you've got tons and tons of people getting in on this project, you can actually be more powerful than any kind of single cloud provider or a single big company's computing data, farm or server farm. So it can be more powerful and bigger because the network effects can be huge and global. Right, but you can also do a system where people can pool their resources of data, right? So one of these things that the big companies have an advantage on, like Google and OpenAI, they've got these huge data sets that they're mining. And what can happen with an AI, a blockchain Cellframe-based AI project, is that people can actually pool their data into one communal pool, and then that can be an open source decentralized AI platform. All right. That's all for Cellframe Talk. I'm going to once again invite, a few people that are here if anyone wants to jump in, ask any questions. Again, exciting times at Cellframe, release candidate and beta, and we're all looking forward to the big launch. Obviously, no hard date yet. We're going to wait and see what bugs pop up. The next step is going to be expanding our beta group a bit, getting more people involved in testing the release candidate. All right. So now I can get into a little more philosophical stuff, look at more of the big picture. Back to my homie CZ Binance. A very interesting article came across my desk. Shout out again to Rex NK, who drew my attention to this on Twitter. So CZ retweeted an article that said that actually had a theory that actually the banking crisis that happened in America and then spread to Europe with the whole panic in the Swiss sector with like the two largest Swiss banks having to merge. Pretty huge story. Obviously, the Silicon Valley Bank collapse was a huge story too, the biggest American bank collapse since 2008 in Wells Fargo. Huge stories, but the theory that was laid out in this article is that actually the bank collapse was actually provoked by American regulators who were targeting crypto-facing banks as kind of an opening salvo in a crypto regulation war against the crypto businesses who are illegally operating in the United States. And so that's an interesting proposal. I think, if CZ is now kind of going head to head with American regulators, I think I think we all knew it was coming. I think, those battle lines are drawn. And if we have an extremely anti-crypto regulatory environment in America that seems like it might be brewing, we're going to rely on the resilience and dynamism of the American political system to get those people out of office, because the people want digital freedom, digital money, decentralized money, and there is no turning back at this point, as far as I can tell. Obviously, the central banks aren't behind. Um, Christian Lagarde, the ECB chairman, recently made a statement that the central banks need to adopt CBDCs if they don't want to lose control. Uh, she mentioned that the central banks are designed to be the anchor of the economy, to keep everything stable, and that CBDCs are necessary. Now, I'm not going to go out against CBDCs or for. I think there's interesting work being done in that. I think there are a lot of different avenues that can go. Obviously, a lot of people who are into decentralization see that as the boogeyman. Kind of, I've even heard a theory that's sort of, well, this is a little bit of a fanciful conspiracy theory, but there are people out there who have said that Bitcoin is like a Trojan horse for it to get people used to the idea of CBDC, so that central banks can release them and then step in and gain even more control, which a lot of people don't want. But let me get a little bit philosophical here. It's interesting, this idea of government control of money. I consider myself a little bit of an amateur historian and done some reading about the past. And it's interesting, one thing that shocked me, I was reading about the Roman Empire and, the late Roman Empire, the Byzantine period. And actually, we think about, the Middle Ages and the classical times as being a time, people think, oh yeah, gold, they just had gold coins and they were just basically trading gold, which has intrinsic value, for items and goods. But that actually wasn't the case. In the Roman Empire, things were pretty controlled. So when the emperor stamped his face and like some symbol, maybe, in Byzantine times, it was like Christ on the back or the Virgin Mary and his face was on the front. And these coins of the realm, and they actually, tried to exert a certain amount of monopoly with those coins. So especially like if you were a trader coming into the capital, there were a lot of rules controlling money and how much you could charge for what. So, in like Constantinople in the 5th century, you were only allowed to trade certain things in a certain area of the city. You had to be a certain type of person, right? So certain classes or groups were banned from engaging in certain kinds of trade. Like it took a while for Vikings to get the opportunity to trade, and there was actually like a Viking raid on Constantinople, and we have the treaty agreement from this time, and they were like, yeah, you guys are going to give us like 10,000 pounds of gold for us to go away. Oh, and also you're going to let our people trade inside the walls of the capital. So this idea of governments really wanting control is not new, and the ability to exert control is not new to sort of the fiat space. Or maybe you could amend that statement to say that fiat actually is very old, going back hundreds of over 1,000 years. So I think what we're dealing with, to look at the big picture of the future of crypto, what do the governments really fear in terms of losing control? Well, of course, they want to be able to keep stability in their economies, like the Romans. They want to make sure the trade goes smoothly. They want to make sure the contracts people aren't doing too much robbing and stealing, and the trade is fair, and that but also that they get their cut, right? So it all goes back to tax revenue. And I think we can take a little step back and say, all right, is there really a fundamental conflict between decentralization and the ability of states to collect revenue and do the public services that we're all used to. And I think not. I think states can be agile. I think that in a kind of a world where blockchain is more dominant, I think states can collect revenue just in different ways. And I don't see the blockchain movement as a threat to governments. I think that people are essentially altruistic, and essentially altruistic people recognize the need for collecting tax revenue and creating public goods. And I don't think we just have to have a different system, a different social contract. All right, anyone want to jump in before I get real philosophical with it? Got about 15 minutes left here, so all right. Thanks y'all for coming out. So there's this talking about social contracts, right? We've got some famous quotes out there from Thomas Hobbes, that life is nasty, brutish, and short, and that life is essentially a war of all against all. And, his theory is that the state and kind of centralized institutions are a way that people can transcend their essential brutishness and essential desire for pure competition. But, I actually believe that that's not true. I don't think that the state of nature is a war of all against all. And that's part of why I love the crypto space. Everyone is super supportive of each other, and there's an idea of international brotherhood, sisterhood, personhood that binds us all together. So if the basis of social contract theory is Hobbes and the war of all against all, I think that what we're basically developing in blockchain is a new social contract. And going back to my interest in Byzantium, I was actually writing a dissertation about this, but I kind of quit that. more interested in working with y'all. But there's this philosophy that goes back to the early days of Christian thinkers in like the 3rd and 4th century of personalism. And it's a little bit against the idea of materialism. Kind of goes back to Plato and the Greeks, and that kind of got fused with sort of Hebrew and Christian thinking. And the basic point is that, the ultimate reality in the world isn't really things, it's persons. So that's why they were in, God and the Trinity and the angels. Maybe they're abstract, but they're still persons. The ancient Greeks had this thing of like personification, where like every river or everything had a kind of like a spirit that lived there. So even physical objects in the world were seen as persons. And I sort of see blockchain, bear with me here, I sort of see blockchain as being a little bit like that. I mean, the fact that instead of institutions interacting with each other and people being mediated through sort of faceless institutions, you've got a real peer-to-peer internet. And the idea of the internet of value, right? So Bitcoin and crypto is internet money. People can send value, and value is created by labor. Michael Saylor talks about energy. People's energies, people's life force, people's work, they now have more control over it and can share it with each other in a direct way instead of being mediated by non-human sort of institutions, right? So I see the whole blockchain network, a kind of Cellframe based future, as being more personalist, where the human being is actually at the center and in control of their information, the value, and they can send their value that they've made or earned to others in the system. All right. And, so yeah, I think that we're building towards a new world. You know what? I'm going to get even a little crazier here. Anyone who was here with me last week, that space didn't get recorded. I blame Twitter, but maybe it was my fault. Twitter is having some issues. I'm not sure good support for Twitter Spaces is these days. So hey, Elon Musk, fix Twitter Spaces, and also if you're going to make the blue check necessary to appear on timelines, make sure you go global with it. You know, we've got an international community here, so there's still some countries that are not being accepted into the blue check space. But anyway, so this is my last little rant for the day. We're going to go back to the idea of the dialectic. And this is what I was saying at the start. It doesn't matter really what, you know, I want to thank all the people that are that are talking about crypto, whether you're for it or against it, right? Because that's how kind of history works: thesis, antithesis, synthesis, right? So whether you're Michael Saylor or, you know, the arch nemesis of Bitcoin, Peter Schiff, who's like constantly tweeting about Bitcoin but trying to say that gold is better, both of them are actually driving a historical process that ultimately culminates in what I'm talking about, which is the kind of new financial system that we're developing in crypto, that was kind of birthed at this moment of the birth of the Bitcoin white paper, right? The minute that people read the Bitcoin white paper, a sort of trajectory was created that ends up in a new, better, more fair, more peer-to-peer, maybe more personal financial system that includes everybody, that doesn't have so much gatekeeping, that doesn't have so much risk, and that just empowers people. So we see this end, right? And so this is kind of why, one way, you know, it's fun to get into debates. You know, I really want to just debate a Bitcoin person, like a Bitcoin maximalist one of these days. I was on a Bitcoin Twitter space the other day, and they were just calling everybody a shitcoin shiller who was just like had anything other than crypto, had anything other than Bitcoin as far as crypto interests. And you know what, folks? You guys are actually the shillers, all right? If all you talk about is Bitcoin, you're a shiller. But I appreciate and love everyone who is active in the space, because they're driving it forward. They're driving history forward towards this new endpoint that we're all looking for. So there's this, I mentioned last time, I'm going to say it again, my greatest professor I ever had back in the day, Boris Groys, philosopher. If you guys want to read some interesting commentary about the contemporary culture and some deep analysis, I encourage you to check that guy out. But you know, he talked about this guy, Alexander Kojev, who was a Hegelian back, you know, this whole idea of the dialectic. And this is before, you know, this isn't kind of like the Marxist line of the dialectic. Some people have heard of that, like, you know, in terms of communism and stuff. But this is a little bit more of a philosophical, even kind of with some religious roots, statement that, you know, once you and he has this figure of the sage. This is kind of like a philosopher who sits at the end of history. And he's actually mentally already at the end point, whereas other people are still kind of trapped in the nitty-gritty of day-to-day stuff, right? So, you know, this concept of the end of history, you might have heard it. There was this dude, Fukuyama, who right after the collapse of communism wrote this book that, like, oh yeah, we're now at the end of history. There won't be any more wars, whatever. That was like, obviously he was wrong, but that was kind of one interpretation of that. But this more philosophical interpretation talks about how you can sort of mentally put yourself already at the end point of this, of the struggle or of the dialectic processes that are happening. And so the sage, I think what I want to do, you know, instead of being mad all the time, like I was last week, just be a sage. And that is that, know that the struggles that are happening, the more intense they are, the faster we're driving towards the end point, right? So it's almost like as if you're already seeing, already put yourself in a place where the crypto world has replaced the current financial system with a much more fair a much more peer-to-peer humanist system. And so, let's be a sage today. It's a little bit Buddhist, right? Like, but Buddhism is a little bit more circular. This dialectic idea is a little bit about us getting to that moment of brotherhood. Whew. All right. Well, I got pretty deep into the weeds there, but thank you all for listening. I just want to leave off on a note from the theme song that I played at the beginning. The words of the great poet Jeffrey. If you lose your life, how's it start? Hustlers don't stop, they keep going. You can lose your life, but it's gonna keep going. Why not risk life if it's gonna keep going? When you die, somebody else was born with it. So, you know what, everybody? We're gonna get to the Cellframe mainnet. That is very in the near future, but the deep future that we're all looking for. I think maybe some of us won't live to see it, but somebody born today, right now, may be the one to take it to fruition, and maybe the one that lives to enjoy it. All right, everyone. Please hit me up on Twitter, on Cellframe Social. Hit us up in the Telegram chats. Shout out to the unofficial chats on Cellframe. They're pretty fun. A lot of crazy memes and weird stuff going on there, but also a lot of engaged community members. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.